Usul al-fiqh is one of the great, which is in essence, it's the philosophy of legislation in the Islamic tradition. Much of the Quran and the Hadith is in fact closer to what we would call constitutional law in the West. It's not statute law. The Prophet ﷺ gives far more constitutional expressions and legal injunctions than he ever gives cut and dry statute law. Do this, don't do that. He leaves things open. There's an immense amount of ambiguity in the hadith. This was known early on. There are very few verses of the Quran and hadith that are considered what is known as qat'iyyat al-dilala, which is where the understanding of the expression is absolute, that we know exactly what it means. It often holds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meanings, and you get all of these multiple interpretations. The other thing that's so extraordinary about our early scholars is that they were very well aware of what we would call in the West fallibilism, that they were not dictating God's law in their jurisprudence. They were dictating the mujtahid or the individual's understanding of God's law. In fact, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya in I'lam al-Muwaqqi'in has a chapter entitled The Prohibition of Calling a Fatwa the Ruling of God. The prohibition of calling a fatwa the ruling of God. The fatwa is a personal opinion of a mujtahid in attempting to understand the intention of a text. Moreover, the fatwa was known and understood to be specific, in many cases, to time and place. This is another aspect of fatwas that are rarely understood, even amongst people that are trained in classical Islamic education. The Hanafi school believes that the place actually affects the ruling, even though the other three schools do not in the Sunni tradition. So if you're in England, there are certain rulings that would be permissible here that might not be permissible in another place. Other scholars argue no. But these are the differences of opinion and the nuances. This is another aspect. The Muslims have always recognized diversity and difference of opinion. But we have what are called thawabit and mutaghayyirat in our Islamic tradition. The thawabit are things that do not change. They cannot be reformed. One of them is our basic understanding of God, our basic understanding of prophecy, our basic understanding of eschatology, of what happens after life. These things are fixed and eternal. They don't change with time and place. God is all-powerful, omniscient. He speaks, and he has no gender, even if we use gender language to express the divine by the limitations of language. But Muslim theologians were always clear there is no gender to God. God is neither male nor female, transcendent.